I tell everybody, number one battle in any insurance claim, number one, everything else can be worked out. Opening coverage. Once coverage is open, once a payment is made, coverage is open. Now it's, like you said, arguing, was I underpaid? How much was I paid? Didn't you pay me for the proper grade of materials? We can go back and forth. We can go to appraisal, supplements. All that can be done within reason. But the biggest hurdle, the biggest battle is coverage.
If you can create a story and basically you're from arrival to the time that you pick up equipment and everything else that you do, if there's a story attached to each and every single one of those line items, if you will, or sections or themed line items, right? That to me just makes it so much easier because now, again, the desk adjuster that I'm talking to may not be a mold remediation expert. Right? May not know anything about contents cleaning, right? They may not know anything about construction, as crazy as this may seem.
We're licensed, we're trained to read policy, walk within the statutes of Florida, at least in my case, and get these things done. Now with the new legislation, a contractor has to be very, very careful of how they word their sales pitch or whatever. They can be hit with, I think it's a $15,000 fine.
You got to make sure that you're on the same page and that, you guys are both equally working as fast as you possibly can to get that check sent out. It doesn't matter if it gets sent out to the customer, to the public adjuster, to the water mitigation company. You just need a check to be stroked from the insurance company because that opens up everything else, right?
Owning any type of restoration business is demanding of your time, your energy, and resources. And that's why we're here. This is Restoration Domination. If you're a contractor in water mitigation, mold remediation, biohazard cleanup, roofers, or public adjusters, you'll learn how to dominate using some of the techniques and strategies that our guests will share. We'll interview top industry insiders, movers and shakers, hustlers and hackers, and anyone dominating their industry. This is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, and dominate. And here's your host, Rico Garcia.
All right, guys. What is going on? Welcome back to another episode of Restoration Domination. Today, I've got a really exciting guest for you. Someone that I've done quite a bit of business with in the past and brings a really interesting perspective to our industry, the restoration industry, both in water mitigation, mold remediation, biohazard cleanup, basically anything that has to do with the claim. The one and only Carlos Machin, the PolicyHolder Advocate. Also get your claims paid. A little bit of a rebranding thing going on right now. But Carlos, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, man. Good. Thanks for having me. You just missed one little thing that you coined the phrase.
I did?
Yeah, you basically coined the little nickname for me, yeah.
Carlos Machin, the claims machine, which is amazing. Personally, I think that should be on all of your business cards, all of your marketing material from here on out. So fill in some of the gaps, man. Like, exactly, who are you? How did you get into the business? What are you doing now? So kind of give us the little deep dive into the history of what got you into the public adjusting game.
Yeah, it's pretty deep. I guess it started back in 2007, 2008. I was a loan officer for a mortgage house, doing refinances and stuff like that. On the phone, you kind of have the background similar on the finance side of things. Dying at that time, that was the worst time of the history of the country to be in the mortgage industry. So my father was working for Allstate at the time. He's like, dude, let's go get a real job. Go learn a trade, get into the business. It's something that can be giving you the benefits and give you a real solid foundation for the rest of your life. So after some push and shoving, I finally went. I got hired by Allstate to do a catastrophe position, field adjuster, and was traveling all over the country. And just got tired of traveling, man. I did 3 years, and the travel was 20 days a month, 10 days on, 4 days off. It got rough. So I found the position locally to South Florida with Liberty Mutual, and took a Liberty Mutual local position in the Tri-County area in South Florida, and it took about almost 3.5 years there. So I did about 7 years total with the carrier side of things, and things just didn't work out. I wasn't really ever meant for the corporate life. You know, when I was growing up through college, I owned a saltwater aquarium business. I've been an entrepreneur and a hustler from day one. So working for a big corporation was tough. And I wanted freedom. I wanted freedom to spend time with my family. I missed so many birthdays, so many anniversaries and things like that. I was like, I'm not going down that route again. So I took a hiatus and I just left, and I went working for other public adjusters. I did a lot of consulting for them, estimating. I did work for attorneys, reviewing files, appraisal work. So I kind of just jumped to the other side. But I also actually was doing work for mitigation companies and contractors, doing comparative estimates that they would need for the carrier. So I was still actually working both sides in the behind the scenes. And then Irma hit. Had a bunch of guys I was running around for doing estimates, and things just started, people started complaining. And I said, you know what? I don't think I'm ever going back to the other side. Let's go ahead and open up a public adjusting firm. Let me get my license. Let me flip over. Enough's enough. Let me help people because they're in need. They're telling me. So that's when the birth of PolicyHolder Advocates happened back in 2018, and we never looked back since. Been a one-man show so far and been loving it. Great amount of time with my family and flexibility, exactly what I wanted, and really feeling like I'm helping people these days. You know, they've struggled through the claims process, and I'm just here to take them from beginning to end as easily as possible.
Right. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on, I mean, obviously we understand, the whole public adjusting side, and we're definitely going to get into the public adjusting side, but from a restoration business owner standpoint, one of the biggest questions that we are always asking is how can, is there a way to facilitate our estimating and billing to the insurance company, and what is it that we can provide? Like, what can we do to facilitate this, the process of us getting paid? And I think that having kind of like that inside track, right, that the 7 years that you spent on the other side really can provide us with a little bit of insight, because there's a lot of rumors and there's a lot of people that, make up these ideas about what's really happening in the business, what's not happening in the business, but nothing compares to actually being there and taking direction from the opposing side, if you will. Yeah. So what was that like? Like, what was the biggest hurdles that, why was it so difficult for insurance companies to pay out? Like, in your opinion, like were there any particular instances that you experienced that you said, wow, this is really messed up? Or how did that process look?
Man, that's such a loaded question, Rico. I mean,
I'm sure there's like so much to unpack there.
It's a huge dynamic. And, look, the bottom line is, in the beginning, I wasn't really purview to exactly how everything runs. I'm learning the business. I'm learning the adjusting side of it rather than the actual insurance side, the policy, the premiums, and how everything works. And I'm just getting information from my higher ups, and okay, I'm just regurgitating it all. I'm not really in it. As my years went by, I figured it out. Look, at the end of the day, it's a bottom line. If they're business, they're not in the business to pay claims. If they did, they wouldn't be in business. Their business is to reinvest the money and make profits for their shareholders or their the mutuals. All that is what drives them. It's money, right? So don't pay this or pinch pennies here, pinch pennies there on each claim, and you. The biggest thing we used to have to happen, arguments we used to have with GCs and roofers and whatever, like estimating guidelines. All right, so this wall here behind me has water damage and 10 square feet, right? Well, we're going to only seal and paint that area. Then we're going to paint that wall one coat and then paint the rest to match. Or we're only going to replace the 10 feet of baseboard behind me and then try to match it and paint the rest of them. You think about it, man, you're only talking about 20 more feet. What's that big of a deal? Well, 20 feet, whatever the square footage of the paint is, you're talking about a couple $100. Let's just say, I'm just throwing numbers out there. A couple $100 over a couple million claims adds up really, really quick. So that's part of how they can cut corners now, and there's a percentage that's going to come back and say, hey, I need a little bit more money. There's another percentage that's just going to say, oh, you know what, I don't want to deal with the insurance company, I'm done. Then there's another percentage that's going to sue them or hire a public adjuster. And so there's a whole company motto, a whole business structure in all these carriers. That's how they work. There's no secrets. There's books written about it. It's just the way it is. But to have a story that was The turning point for me to really know that I'm in the wrong side of things, or I wasn't doing what I thought should be the right thing. I won't say which one, but I had a claim that it was a little 85-year-old woman's home. Place was nice, condo, but it got flooded from above. You know what you got to do when floods like that. 2-foot flood cut everywhere that it's wet. Well, the whole unit was wet. 2,000 square foot apartment. I'm sitting at the table. We used to have authority to be able to write estimates on site, blah, blah, blah. Go ahead and write the estimate, go to cut the check. System won't let me cut the check. Why not? Start looking, start digging. She only had $8,000 worth of coverage. I was trying to write on a carrier side an estimate of $45,000 I was trying to issue her right then and there. Couldn't do it. There was no coverage for it.
Wow.
She had the policy for 30 some odd years. Never once did an agent decide to call her up and say, hey, inflation's a little bit more, or your value is not there. Premiums left on the table, by the way. They lost money by not taking those premiums in. They wouldn't pay the claim. They wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't. I try to get the agent to put it under their E&O insurance. And nothing. Nothing. And I just realized, look, you got somebody that's customer, never questioned anything, never had a claim, 30-something years as a customer paying their premiums, never needed us. And now the day that they need us, we're not coming through. That really dug at me really good. Because could have been my grandmother. Could have been your grandmother. You know what I mean? And her house was destroyed, bro. I mean, it was horrible. So that was a big turning point of really, what side am I on? Who am I really helping? Who's the disservice that's happening? It was the beginning to the end.
And we see stuff like this all the time, right? Customers that they've had the same policies for years, decades, and just haven't missed a payment, just faithfully, saying, hey, I've got, I'm contributing to this thing in the event that I have an issue, they're going to have my back. And sometimes, when we walk in as restoration contractors, I'm sure even on the public adjusting side, right? And you walk in and you're like, hey, by the way, I know that you've been doing the right thing for the past 20 years, paying your insurance company. And I know that you think that because you haven't missed a payment, because you've been loyal to that company, that somehow this is going to be given back. It's just not really the way that it works. And we see this stuff all the time, right? Where people just don't have enough coverage, where, immediately, sometimes even before the field adjuster even leaves, it's a denied claim. And here the client's like, what's going on? But what I'm really interested in knowing is like, what was like the company culture back then, or like industry culture from the inside? Were there a lot of limitations on where the companies basically said, hey, look, when you go out there, you can't write more than this, or you have to turn a blind eye to this?
At least the positions I held, with Allstate, I was catastrophe work. So it was pretty much run in, run out, try to cut a check as much as you possibly can to get them going. And then we're going to supplement because it's a catastrophe type of situation. It's always going to be supplements. So it really was, I never really saw it there in that culture. I'm both companies, I walked around with checkbooks. I had authority up to $40,000 at any given time on any given claim. I didn't have to answer to anybody. The problem now, I think the culture that we're seeing is that all these carriers have kind of stepped away from the staff adjusting realm of things, and everything's IAs, and there's buffers between every layer. So IA's only got a certain amount of authority to even suggest there's coverage on. The desk adjuster is going to do something. Then that's going to go back to their supervisor, supervisor. Then they need the financial team or whatever. And this is, bringing like 10 different carriers into one. But that's what's going on now, I think, more than ever. Back then, the only thing was that I would say that we used to turn the blind eye, in the sense of like, not blind eye, but I felt like we always kind of dragging things out, and it would drag my job out. Would the whole kitchen cabinetry matching? We'd have to bring out an expert. Hey, what kind of repair can they do? Oh, they can't repair it, and it just takes another 3-4 weeks before we get an answer. And it's like, for what? Just pay it. We know we're going to pay it eventually, somehow, some way. Just pay it now. But again, it goes back to that mentality of, hey, let's keep that bottom line down. So we know we're going to have a certain amount of money to pay out on this loss. We have an idea of what it's going to cost. Let's reinvest that every single night. And by the time we finally pay it, we don't care. We've made it all up. We made it all up at the end, and that's, I think, one of the founding fathers of Allstate. I can't remember the book, the author, but it was delay, deny, defend. is the book. And it's just basically the whole structure of an insurance company. It doesn't matter if it's property, health, auto. It's all the same thing.
Right. It's all the same kind of mentality. It's how long can you drag this thing out and keep that money on your side of the books? Because again, I mean, the longer that they have the money, the longer that they can play with that money, right? So it stands to reason that, hey, you know, that's either interest or investments that are still paying dividends, whatever that looks like. And, you know, again, like a lot of people just don't understand, like the insurance company is not in the business of paying out claims. They're in the business of collecting premiums, taking those premiums, investing them in other markets to have that money make more money. And hopefully, you know, they don't get too many claims at once. So on the public adjusting side, like once you actually made that switch, like how much of that knowledge and skill and understanding how the other side worked, how much of an advantage did that give you on the public adjusting side?
Oh, man, I think a huge advantage. And actually, people that have approached me about getting into the business and really green, no experience, they've always asked me, what should I do? What should I do? I'm really interested. So go work for the insurance company. Go learn what to not do on this side, or learn what you need to focus on that they're not doing on the inside. So for me, knowing their process is how a claim starts from FNOL, first notice of loss, to the adjuster, or dispatch to the adjuster, to field, to desk, and all the intricacies that are in and around that. Help me sympathize really with some of these people. You know, I get on the phone or I get in person to an adjustment, and I just break down that wall, dude. Hey, yeah. Oh, how long you been there? Okay, yeah. I've been on this side for such amount of time. I've been in the business this long. Oh yeah, when'd you start? But dude, you know how many times I've run into people that started at Allstate almost the same exact time as I did, in the same unit. I mean, we came up the ranks together and didn't even know we haven't seen each other in years. So that helps a lot, you know, and because when you have somebody on the inside that is compassionate towards what you're trying to do, and we both know mutually we're both trying to get a job done, we're trying to close that claim, because everything for them is a closure. That's the biggest parameter that they go by, besides estimating accuracy and promptness and all that stuff. It's closures. I used to have to close 12 or 15 per week to be able just to make my mark. If I didn't do so, then I have to make it up the following week or so forth. So I had to be a, you know, monthly total running. So if you help them close that claim faster, and this goes right to you guys in the mitigation side. Opening question to me. If you give them all the documents and tell them, hey, this is what I need, blah, 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 blah. Give them a little synopsis, not just throw a bunch of reports at them. Hey, so-and-so mitigation adjuster, here's why I had this and this, just so you know, you're aware. I'm sure it's going to kick back from your guidelines. This is why, and I hope this helps justify it with you or your supervisor. Dude, you're going to get those things paid so much faster, on top of the fact of not having a stupid high bill. I used to see $15,000, $20,000 dryouts for a 5x8 bathroom. I mean, stupid.
Right.
Stupid stuff.
Right. And this is stuff that we've all seen,
Yeah.
right? And one of the things that I've done in my company is I've never tried to get rich on any one particular client, right? Like for me, it's just, that's not a business model that you can scale, number one. And even if you do get lucky and you can scale, inevitably you're going to get a really, really bad rap quickly. Because again, I mean, seems like a big world, but ultimately you have X amount of desk adjusters, you got X amount of insurance companies. Eventually somebody's going to be catching on and saying, you know what? Oh, great. Here's a so-and-so file. Yep. This is going to be a problem. So for me, it's always been, number one, story-based invoicing.
Real quick,
how can we create a story?
Sorry to interrupt you. You just said something very important. There are lists that exist within the carriers for mitigation companies.
Oh, yeah.
For public adjusters, for attorneys, that they're watching for fraud, whatever it may be. They're trying to put connections together. They're constantly investigating these things. So to keep your name off that list, these are the practices you got to keep on going with. And I know, obviously, you and I have talked about this a lot, but I just wanted to jump that real quick in. So go ahead. Story-based.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and again, doing this all goes back to doing the right thing, right? The better that you can be at, number one, not being greedy. And because look, at the end of the day, there's no need to be greedy. There's more than enough money out there and more than enough people that legitimately need your real help. And there's so much money just in that legitimate pool. There's no reason for you to take what would be normally a $5,000 estimate and try to bump that up to $15,000 just because you know that you're going to have to negotiate, and then maybe you settle at 12. Like, there's really no reason to play those games. If you did X amount of work, you should bill for X amount of work and call it a day. Keep it moving. Move on to the next deal. But also just in the way that you invoice, I feel helps quite a bit. If you can create a story and basically from arrival to the time that you pick up equipment and everything else that you do, if there's a story attached to each and every single one of those line items, if you will, or sections or themed line items, that to me just makes it so much easier, because now, again, the desk adjuster that I'm talking to may not be a mold remediation expert, may not know anything about contents cleaning. They may not know anything about construction, as crazy as this may seem, right? So you have to keep that in mind. So now taking that information and creating your invoice, even with an Xactimate, creating that estimate and kind of creating this in a story type format, along with really good photos that also collaborate this. Really what you want is someone who look at your invoicing, at least in my opinion, look at your invoicing and your photos in a way that you can hand it to someone who's not in the insurance company, who's not in the insurance game, who's not in the restoration game, and they can decipher based on those line items and based on the storyline what happened there. And if you can accomplish that, I think that makes the entire process that much faster to close out more claims. And typically, you don't get that much pushback either.
No. I mean, look, I've said it 100 times. I'll say it 100 times more. And it used to be ingrained in our heads too. Documentation. I mean, plain and simple. You can't ever have too much. The worst thing that on top of the stupid, crazy high invoices were your photos. Oh, here they are. A sheet of black and white, 10 photos. You can barely even make out the address. Like, in this age, you should not have black and white photos. You shouldn't be faxing in any documents like that. You should be sending on high res, one picture per page. You'll never get denied. You won't. And not just, hey, here's the water damage and then that's it. No, get that close up, get that secondary half of the room, get the third room, get every corner you can. That is just gonna step you up. I know it takes an extra couple of minutes, but you put me onto Company Cam. I mean, that product is, I don't know about sponsoring and advertising on it, but on your podcast, but
Company Cam, we need a sponsorship.
Hey,
I'm constantly talking about Company Cam. Yeah, I'm constantly talking about Company Cam.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, from here on out, I might actually just bleep them out until we get that sponsorship.
There you go.
But
other apps. I'm constantly do that, and,
yeah.
and makes it facilitates that ability, but. Still, I mean,
but the principle is the same, right? The principle is the same, right? You like now for you to go ahead and each and every single one of your techs, whoever it is that you want to collaborate with, subs, it doesn't matter. If they have a smartphone, they're part of the team, and everything is time-stamped. Everything is geotagged. You can annotate. You can do so much just within that, and first of all, it doesn't clog up your phone, which that to me alone.
When you told me about that, I was
that's
like,
a winner.
Boom, done. It's done.
But then on top of that, you could take it even a step further, and not only does it sync with the other estimating softwares and stuff like that, but you can create independent reports. So if you've got a project, a multi-loss project, let's say you're doing the water mitt, the mold, tarping, shrink wrapping, whatever it is, well, sure, it's that same client file, but you want to break those up into individual reports, and it's just quick and it's easy, and it's like you said, it's high res. And each one of those photos could have its own commentary. Yep. It just makes it so much easier. I mean, I still see guys, and not saying that there's anything right or wrong with it, but to me, it just seems cumbersome. Still rolling around with like the old school little cameras, like the point and shoot cameras. Like, that's cool, but I mean, the amount of time that takes. I mean, now you have to go ahead and take your disc, you got to put it in your computer, you got to go ahead and download everything, you got to remember. It's just this entirely different process, and it just doesn't make sense with the way the technology is today. There's so many other things that you can use to make your documentation that much easier for the other party to read and to understand.
I couldn't agree more, man. I was one of those guys up until I think right before you told me about that app, or I was using my phone and then clogging things up, and I'm trying to find photos of my kids or whatever, and I'm going through, oh, there's Mrs. Smith's house, oh, I don't need that one, and then I sit there trying to delete 600 photos from last week, let alone last month. So it definitely changed the game. But like you said, I mean, more the fact that, oh, hey, boom, let me just send this report to you right now. You need the photo report? Here, there you go. Or collaborate. Like you or me on a file, we can take that to the next level. And I think also too, for the restoration side of things, and I know there's a lot of EMS companies out there already working with public adjusters and so forth, but we keep on talking about you guys and contractors and roofers, and some guys just don't want to work with us, and they think that we're taking a cut of their pie, and no, we're getting these claims paid. We're licensed, we're trained to read policy, walk within the statutes of Florida, at least in my case, and get these things done. Now with the new legislation, a contractor has to be very, very careful of how they word their sales pitch or whatever. They can be hit with, I think it's a $15,000 fine, whatever. It's just, and the problems with,
I mean, currently there's some pushback on that, and that's still an open and
yeah, but why even go down that route? There's plenty of meat everywhere for us to eat, everybody to eat. But at the end of the day, what are we really doing this for?
Well, here's where let me tell you. This is where I'm at, and when it comes down to that argument, right? And I understand both sides, and I'm a big advocate for bringing on public adjusters, not as a lead source, because honestly, for me, it's more of a selling tool. The public adjuster for me is more of a selling tool
100%.
Because again, I chase a lot of cash. So for me, what I want to do is I don't want to chase the insurance company. Like I don't want to play that game. What I want to do is I want to collect from the client. Now, luckily and fortunately enough for me, I live in Florida. So because I'm in Florida, and in the area in Florida in which I live, I'm like dead smack in the middle. We've got Palm Beach, arguably one of the most rich locations, zip codes in the nation. Then we've also got Miami, which is a hop, skip, and a jump away. Boca in the middle. Like we're surrounded by affluence. We're surrounded by people that have cash. Unlike other cities that we can mention in the state of Florida, where it's like the median home value is like 200,000, like maybe the average income 50,000, right? So I understand that I geographically am lucky, right? Maybe I can go ahead and pull this off here, but for me, I've always used the public adjuster more of as a selling tool. I go into the client, and yes, I have an AOB in one hand, but I also have just another regular contract or just a regular work authorization. And that's the first one that I'm pulling off in front of the client. And the way that I make them feel comfortable is say, hey, look, you're not going to be left alone in this entire process. What we're going to do is we're going to and then I walk them through the process. I show them what the bill would look like. I show them what I can do as far as pricing right now, because again, I'm a lot more lenient because I'm working with the homeowner, right? And I also understand that they're coming out of pocket. I also am very cognizant of my time. In other words, if I don't have to chase down my money for 6 months or 3 months or a year in some case, to me, that's worth a lot of mental bandwidth. I can actually attach a dollar figure to that. So the point is that I'm willing to negotiate with the individual client. Great. So now that we've got that out of the way, well, how do I make that customer feel really comfortable? Be like, hey, by the way, I've got this pro who speaks the insurance language, who's got a fantastic track record, and is going to go ahead and hold your hand throughout the entire process, so you don't have to worry about a thing. That facilitates the cash sale.
Of course.
A lot of times. So for me, it's always been more of a tool. Now, that being said, there's both sides of this argument. Public adjusters sometimes say, well, you really shouldn't be negotiating your own, you shouldn't be discussing policy. Well, we're not discussing policy.
Well, you're not discussing policy with the carrier. You can discuss
with
policy
the carrier,
with the insured all you want.
Oh, no, I get that. So what I'm saying is, what I'm saying is here is this, right? What I'm saying is that when you submit your estimate, when you submit your invoice to the carrier, you're not necessarily discussing policy, but what you are is arguing your reasoning for getting paid what you're supposed to be getting paid. Now, and a lot of public adjusters are like, oh, well, you shouldn't even be doing that, right? Like that should be the public adjuster's thing. And I'm like, okay, well, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Like as long as I'm not saying, show me in the policy where, or talk about policy language specific, like I understand. And we're not really adjusting a claim. That's not what we're trying to do. I don't care what you want to pay out for repairs and for all of this other stuff. I'm just discussing what my invoice is and how I can defend it. On the opposite side of that, though, there's the advantage of bringing in a public adjuster. Number one, if I run into a hiccup knowing that there's a public adjuster on file, that actually helps me because I can always kind of play a little bit of hot potato, be like, hey, by the way, like now that you're involved on this too, why don't you help me maximize what because this is the offer that they're trying to give me. Let's try to see how we can work together and try to get, a bigger settlement. Yep. So there is some advantage there. And also on the flip side of that is that the client is also taken care of on the back end, right? Because if, let's say, for example, on a water mit project, sure. So they pay whatever that water mitigation is, right? The emergency water mit or just regular water mitigation, mold remediation, and they're out of pocket, whatever that invoice is, right? 10,000, 20,000, whatever that number is. Great. And the insurance company, let's just pretend that they pay that. They don't even bat an eyelid at that. Okay, fantastic. What about the repairs? What about all of that stuff? How do we know that the insurance company is going to do the right thing by the client? So for me, it's also a little bit about reputation, because even if we get paid by the insurance company and the customer kind of feels like they got bamboozled by the insurance company and that they were unrepresented throughout the entire process, having a public adjuster kind of facilitates and makes sure that the customer, assuming that you actually deal with decent public adjusters that care, that's going to facilitate that entire process. I mean, what's your take on that?
I mean, yeah, that's where I was going with it, is forget about everything. At the end of the day, my job, and I know we've worked together and we're basically the same way. It's the customer, man. We're here to make sure that they're taken care of. You're protecting them from further damage. You're protecting them from mold spores. You're protecting them from harming their family or their children or because of allergies, whatever it may be. I'm there to make sure that they get paid so they can get their house back in order. So for me to sit here and try to, no different than, look, if something has to be settled, we're close to a number that we need, and my client needs this, but my contract says I'm entitled to this, and that's not going to get them where they need to be. You got to be human. But what would you want done to you if you were in that situation? Is the way I look at it. So sometimes, hey, do you have to cut your fees to make that customer happy? Well, guess what? It's a VIG that you're paying. You're paying a VIG right now. You're taking a little bit of a loss that you probably entitled to more contractually or whatever it may be, but you've got a client for life. You're going to have a referral base that you can't believe because they said, man, you know what? This guy went above and beyond for me. And you can sleep at night knowing you did the right thing. So to go crazy and all, yes, I mean, I think it's part of a well-oiled machine is that you need us, we need you guys, and it's all part of it. I can't, most of the times I can't get my files paid for or done correctly if I don't have a proper mitigation company on the file taking care of business so that, yeah, I can document so much, but you guys are the front lines. You guys are really, most of the times, getting there when the pipe is still, running with water or locating the leak and things like that. So if I don't have that support, my job is starting 20 feet behind where I needed to start or more. And I think vice versa too. You guys can get propelled into another position so that you can worry about the next job. Hey, he's chasing my money, not chasing my money, but he's chasing why I should get paid, and solidifying the claim and the coverage. So absolutely, I think it's like a yin and yang situation. We can't really work without each other at the end of the day.
Well, one major disconnect I think that a lot of the mitigation companies out there that they have with regards to working with public adjusters is that they think that they're going to be eating into their mitigation and mold remediation money, which nothing is further from the truth. Like, one thing has nothing to do with the next, because typically the public adjuster is really making money on the repair side of things. Has nothing to do with the water man.
Well, I mean, it all depends, Rico. I mean, look, contractually, the public adjusters is owed a percentage off the whole claim. It doesn't say, contents, mold, water mit, rebuild, ALE. It's the whole claim. So from the minute the deductible is absorbed to the payment, the final payment, we're entitled to a whole percentage, right? But the way I look at it is that most of the times, okay, let's just say 10%, 20%, whatever the number is, you have negotiating room there, right? You have negotiating room on your estimate, on your invoices, because we know that you have to submit a bill within reason. You can argue every single line item, but are you willing to accept less to get the payment, the claim done? Yeah, absolutely. Everybody is. That's the nature of the beast. But if I'm getting that paid at a higher amount, or you don't have to worry about the negotiation, again, It's the VIG that you're paying to get your money and not have the headaches. You can sleep at night not worrying about that. I know PAs that don't touch anything to do with the mitigation, as long as the mitigation company handles all their you-know-what themselves. If I have to literally chase your money, we have to have an understanding, what it is. And, that's the other part. If
that goes without saying, like, typically what happens is, like, at least for me in my organization, like, I go ahead and get the AOB. I go ahead and submit all my documentation. I'm constantly, we're the ones that are chasing the money. Right now, if we hit that stone, if we hit a stone wall and we're like, hey, now this is where communication I think is really important. But like, hey, where are you at on your side of the claim? This is where I'm at on my side of the claim. As a matter of fact, like you and I had one recently that, yes, you got coverage on one thing, but then they didn't want to cover the interior of the property. But because I had that documented in a certain way,
perfect
all of a sudden, and it was just this thing that just worked well. But that's where you really need to have a lot of good communication throughout the entire process. But going kind of back to the money, right? Typically what's happened, at least what my experience has been, is the water mit and mold remediation, that kind of aspect has never been touched at all. It hasn't even come up in conversation where it's like, hey, I want a piece of your money. Part of it is because I'm chasing mine so effectively, or I try to chase it down so effectively that really what I'm trying to do is expedite. Because once they start stroking my money, the claim's already open. Like everything else in theory should move a lot faster. And this is another thing too. When you're building a relationship with a public adjuster, with a water mitigation company, you got to make sure that you're on the same page and that, you guys are both equally working as fast as you possibly can to get that check sent out. It doesn't matter if it gets sent out to the customer, to the public adjuster, to the water mitigation company. You just need a check to be stroked from the insurance company, because that opens up everything else. Then at that point, now you can start getting into the debate of, okay, was I underpaid or was I not underpaid?
I tell everybody, number one battle in any insurance claim, number one, everything else can be worked out. Opening coverage. Once coverage is open, once a payment is made, coverage is open. Now it's, like you said, arguing, was I underpaid? How much was I paid? Did you pay me for the proper grade of materials? We can go back and forth. We can go to appraisal, supplements. All that can be done within reason. But the biggest hurdle, the biggest battle is coverage. Once coverage is open, it's not, I use the term sometimes, like they creep the door open a little bit. Now I kick it open. It's like the SWAT team coming in to catch you. It is what it is, And again, it goes back to the little bit that they try to pay up front about what we versus what we get at the end, and what is really owed. It's not that we're not creating things. I used to see it. I saw fraud all the time. I had many different referrals to the states for fraud in North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, here in Florida, South Florida particularly had a bunch of guys that were sent for a fraud investigation. It all went up to the state, and I don't know if they ended up being part of some of these unmasking of some rings, but either way, there's bad actors everywhere, and it'll come full circle the wrong way. So for us as a public adjuster to sit here and create things, I think is just silly. Just like you said, there are so many homes. Forget about the affluence of the area that we live in. We are in one of the most populated areas in the country. The Tri-County area is one of the three largest populations in the entire state, first of all. So all those homes, there's so much work out there. You don't need to be falsifying things. You don't need to be pushing limits. I used to get estimates on the carrier side of, hey, here's a kitchen sink leak. Literally, there's only one box damaged. Okay, can it be repaired? Can it not be repaired? That was a whole different story. They're literally almost knocking down the whole house and rebuilding it. Like, for what? All you just did was you grabbed your claim and just put it to the bottom of the pile. Because that adjuster doesn't want to even see that toilet paper. They don't, it's just, that's how it works. So if you give them BS, they're going to kick it right back to you, or not even talk to you, or ignore your calls. But if you give them those clean, lean estimates, those lean invoices that are within reason, get paid for what you're owed. You guys are specialists. You guys are licensed. You guys have the overhead. You have all the insurance, the liability that you need to carry for what you guys do. You guys deserve to get paid, but don't make it over the top, because then you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel how quick those checks start to slow down, and for what? For a couple $100? I mean, we've had this conversation. A couple $100, $1,000.
Right. Well, we've had this conversation quite a bit, and something that I've mentioned quite a bit is you have to be willing to some degree not to be in the way of settling out a claim, because you have to understand that, number one, the homeowner is still involved. Number two, there's other pros that are still involved. Yep. And sometimes you have to, and again, this doesn't happen on every claim, but sometimes you have to be willing to go ahead and take a lesser number for the greater good. And I've personally seen tons of cases where the entire claims process is held up because a water mold remediation guy doesn't want to take $2,000 or $3,000 off of his invoice so that everything can be released. And I'm talking about large, settlements, $90,000, $100,000 settlements.
Then they go put a lien on the insurance property. Like, yeah, you're going to get another claim from them.
Right? So what happens is like everybody's playing this like short game as if there was some lack of money out there or lack of business out there, and it's very short-sighted. I also think that this is a very good way to start determining like the value of the relationship. Right? Like if you have a business relationship and you have a water mold remediation guy, whatever kind of contract, it doesn't really matter even who it is, but who's not willing to negotiate, who's constantly trying. Number one, he's got these overinflated invoices, and then number two, he's not willing to go ahead and settle for the greater good of the overall claim. That is not a good relationship. And we've seen this all the time. They're like, oh, what, you don't want to pay me 100%? No problem. Litigation. Oh, you don't want to pay me 100%? No problem. Litigation. And they like hold up this entire process when, quite frankly, you could have made $1,000 less on your invoice. You're not going to go hungry for $1,000 less than your invoice. But now all of a sudden, this claim that you took it from 9 months, a 1 year debacle, down to a couple of weeks, essentially, in the grand scheme of things.
Listen, time is money, right? So if you've got this X amount on the table now, you might get XY in 6 months, but you got to wait 6 months, and that might not even be close. That time frame might not even be realistic. It might be a year and a half. So why are you going to just go balls to the wall over a couple grand when you can take it now and worry about the next one? I mean, and then that's the other thing.
And also the thing is too, is also remember the client is always there. Like they're part of this experience with you. So if you can tell a client, hey, look, we already settled out with the insurance company. Our portion's already taken care of. And you were literally in and out of this thing relatively soon, at least by the standards of insurance billing, right? That's a very different conversation than saying to the client, to the customer, saying, hey, yeah, you know what? The insurance company, they're just being adamant, my bill is X amount and I'm not willing to come down. And this is why this entire process is being drug out for, a year now. Yeah. Eventually the client is going to piece together that you're part of the problem. You're not being part of the solution, you're being part of the problem. So trying to find, even being thoughtful throughout that process is really helpful as well.
Yeah, man. At the end of the day, again, it just comes back to the client. What is it about? The client, referrals, future business. You want to play the short game? You'll be part of the short game. You want to play the long game? You'll be around for a long time. And that was part of some of the legislation over the last couple of years, was to weed out a lot of mitigation companies. A bunch of them folded after the AOB stuff because that was too much easy money. They would, like you said, sign it, send it over to the attorney immediately. Like there wasn't even a peer review done on their invoice, and it's already in the attorney side, and they're getting fees and this. It was a big racket. It was the best thing that could have happened. It weeded out a bunch of those guys, and no different than a few other pieces of legislation. It's going to weed out those guys more and more, and the bad apples or the lazy ones, is what I call it. Look, there's plenty of lazy PAs, and they don't want to do certain things, and they just sign it, and after they do the first initial inspection, there goes to the attorney. Some clients don't even know. I've heard stories of clients getting claims settled, and they never knew until the check showed up. I mean, come on. That's the stuff that just puts a stain on the entire industry. And again, I think it just comes back to alliances. And the biggest thing you can do is line yourself up with somebody that you can trust and that just performs. And PAs included. Sometimes PAs, look, we're all human. Things happen. We're entitled to a bad day here and there or whatever. Things get messed up. As long as you're willing to to own up and fix it, you'll be fine. That's been my secret, I guess, at the end of the day. Just seeing all those companies that used to send in all these bills and all the fights with roofers that I used to have on the phone over, again, pennies, like we're talking about. Hey, I want $350 a square. Dude, I'm giving you $340 a square right now without any, but no, I need $350. All right, dude, see you later. I'm not paying any more than $340. Why? Why are we going to do that over $10 a square on a 30 square roof? We're talking about $3,000. Like you're really going to hold up this person's roof for $3,000? And then guess what happens a lot of times? Hey, no. I just paid him the $3,000, so just do me a favor and just issue the rest. I don't care. I just need this to go away. Who's getting burned? The insured.
Right.
You know, so.
Right. Part of the issue, too, is how much business is actually available out there.
So much.
Because a lot of contractors, they look at it and they're like, oh, you know what? It doesn't really matter. Like, I can go ahead and stick to my guns. I'll go ahead and get top dollar on every single client, and I'm just on to the next deal, on to the next deal, on to the next deal. So there's that part of the argument as well, whereas not being so greedy per se. And I'm not saying to not get paid what you're worth. That's not what we're talking about, right? Like, if you need to get $350 because you need $350, okay,
show me why.
Then stick to that. Yeah, show me why. Here's why I need $350, and this is the cost of doing business. This is what I pay my crew. This is whatever, right? Whatever that is, but you need to be able to justify.
You got to justify.
But if you realistically would have done that roof, if it was a cash pay roof, and you would have done it for $320 or $310,
they would have aided and give him an upgrade. Are you kidding me? Like it's just the crazy part, you know? It's
right.
And I've had them say it to me. Well, if I just wish they just paid me cash, it would have been an easier deal. I would have accepted it. Why? Because now it's the insurance company that we have to eat it. So, like, I definitely see both sides of things, right? And I try to bring that to every single one of my claims and the mitigation companies and the adjusters and try to piece both sides so that we can just make this process easier for everybody. And, again, like something simple. We've shared it together with a couple files. If I'm out there, I'm measuring the house. Isn't it the best interest for me to just give you the ESX? Give you the measurements of the
absolutely.
house? I mean, why not? So why wouldn't I do that for the adjuster that's coming out there to try to pay the claim? Yeah, take it, dude. If I could just save you an hour, you think I'm a boss for doing that? I'll do it every single time. Every time. And those are some of the things that help and push things along, you know, and dude, at the end of the day, the way I look at it is you just got to be human. You got to be human and think about these things a little bit more because people get too wrapped up. You know, I know we got bills to pay and all those things and kids to feed. And, you know, we both got two each that drive us crazy every day. But just be human about it, dude. The money's not worth it it's not worth it that much to slow down your entire business, you know, at the end of the day. So
switching gears here real quick, a lot of water mitigation companies, mold mitigation companies, restoration companies as a general rule of thumb, do see public adjusters as a potential for leads, right? So in your opinion, and again, you probably get a lot of phone calls where a lot of guys are just like, hey, what's going on? Like, let me go ahead and take you out to lunch. Let me take you out here. Let me take you out there. What would you suggest would be the absolute best approach for restoration companies to approach public adjusters to say, hey, look, this is why you would want to trust me with your clients, and this is what I can bring to the table? What's the best way for them to market to a public adjuster, in your opinion?
I've never really been a fan of the wine and dine, even though I like a nice meal and a cocktail or whatever every once in a while. That definitely makes it a little bit easier, but that doesn't tell me who you are, right? You know, we have to have a conversation. Let's talk about family. Let's talk about this, whatever. I've been approached by a bunch over the last few months as we're getting a little bit more exposure on the internet with Google and stuff like that. So people are searching for us, and I've gotten a bunch of different pitches, man. And I would say probably the best to approach a PA is like, here's one of my sample files. This is one of my dry outs that I did. Here's one of the biggest dry outs I did. You know, show it. Hey, look, here was my invoice, and this is what was paid by the time we were done. And I got paid in X amount of time. Even if it's only one file that you could talk about, you bring it up. I'm sure most of us have a bunch of, you know, success stories that we can talk about. But I think that's one of the biggest ones. And not for nothing, no different than probably the other way around. If I would be a PA, chasing a mitigation company to work with and get leads from, bring a claim.
Right.
It's kind of a circle, but money's the root of what's it called, the road to my heart, right? That's at the end of the day, we're working to make money. So if you bring me a claim, hey, I got something that I can maybe get you on and whatever, whether it ends up working out or not, it's up to the insured, obviously, right? You can't guarantee someone signing with you, but that might be like a nice and enticing situation to bring to a PA, right? But more importantly, I think is just work. Here's what I've done. Here's my photo report. Here's the report I put together. There was a big company in SVG that did that, and that kind of made me think about that. Is that while we were out there, they were talking to me, and they pulled up an iPad. Hey, look, boom, boom. Here's shrink wrapping that they did, and here's everything before, after, all of our notes, all this, that, boom, and dude, it was like 60 pages. I was like, okay, wow. So you just gotta be able to prove yourself.
Just leading with results is what's really important. Showing people, number one, what you've already done in the past. Yep. Number two, showing them what you're capable of, and then also leading with results. Right, like the fastest way to build a relationship is to come with something of value. Well, what's really valuable to another pro? Look, any pro can buy their own steak lunch, right? There's nothing really special about that. I mean, yes, you're spending some time with another pro, but at its core, like, we understand while we're there. For me, I really don't have a lot of time. Like, my phone is constantly ringing. Like, hey, Rico, why don't we get together? Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? But I don't know you yet. And it's not because I'm all high and mighty. I'm the furthest thing from that. It's just, if I'm taking an hour to meet with you, someone who I don't know, that I don't know what your work ethic is. I don't know what you bring to the table. I don't know your reputation. I don't know anything about you. And really the purpose for your meeting is because you want to go ahead and get tied into my network and my lead flow and everything that I have going on. Dude, I can't really afford to just burn an hour, because if I'm spending that hour with you, that means that I'm not spending it with my family. I'm not spending it on my business. I'm not spending it on anything that I want to do. I'm not spending it with my kids. I'm not doing any of that, right? Yep. So I'm investing that time, and that hour I can never get back. I could always buy my own steak, but I can't get back that hour. So for me, what I much rather is, hey, you want to have a conversation? Let's have a phone conversation. Because number one, you can tell a lot, at least for me, I can tell a lot about a person over a phone conversation. That's number one. Number two, let's save each other the trip and the pleasantries. You really want to talk business? Let's go ahead and schedule a little bit of time. We can get on a Zoom call. You can share your screen. You can show me what you've done. You can show me this. You can show me that. And I'll know whether or not on a Zoom conversation if we even jive. Like, are we getting along the way that we should be getting along? Like, that's a big telltale. From there, if you want to invite me out to like lunch, or if I want to invite you out to lunch, great. But really, nothing is going to be better than, hey, by the way, this is who I am. This is what I can bring to the table. Check out these reports. Check this out too. Oh, and by the way, here's a client, here's a file, here's a recommendation here's a lead, here's something that's going to go ahead and get the relationship going. Because everything else is foreplay. Right? But once you go ahead and you call someone with a lead or a recommendation or a file, now they need to take some action, right? Because now they're kind of committed. Now you have a better reason to go back to that person and be like, hey, hey, I sent you this file like three days ago. Like, how's it going with that file? How's it going with that client? So now you get to build, over the course of just that one client, you get to build a real meaningful relationship, because now you're having constant conversations that are actually needed to be had, right? So it's not like a random, like, hey, what are you doing today? No. And we're talking about the client, but throughout that, you're building rapport throughout the entire process, which I think is really the way that it should go from one pro to the next.
I couldn't agree more. It's
So what are you doing now for what's on the horizon for you and your public adjusting firm? What do you see happening over the course of the next 2 to 3 years?
We're expanding, man. We're pretty excited. I have potentially, as you know, my wife she also used to work for Liberty Mutual for several years as an auto adjuster. She's kept her license active, and she's about to switch her license over now to a public adjuster so she can help run the office a little bit more. And then we're going to be bringing on a couple of apprentices. So we're trying to expand our reach So I'm only one person, a one-man show, so it's been a little difficult to be everywhere at once and then keep the family life work balance situation. Family for me, my personal life comes before everything. Money comes and goes and all that, but that's somewhere where I want to get more towards a little bit more time with them. So we're bringing in a couple of apprentices. I'm hoping we'll have a freestanding office maybe in the next couple of years where customers can actually come and visit us and pick up checks and things like that and do some seminars. With a little bit of push of you and another friend of ours, hope maybe possibly starting my own YouTube channel or podcast to help out homeowners. We want to get more information out to homeowners. I don't think it's amazing how many people I still run into. I never knew what a public adjuster was. That's somebody that can represent me against the insurance company. Absolutely. My wife's nail tech the other day is like, man, they paid me only this much. Your husband could have done better. She's like, probably at least double. He's like, oh my God, I wish I called you. They don't know. There's so many people that don't know. So if we can get more information out there and just tidbits of just what to do at time of a loss, what to do before a loss, what things you can do to prevent an insurance company from trying to say to you, hey, this has been there for a long time. This is seeping for more than 14 days. There's no coverage. And then you've just done your job of drying out, and now you're already sitting at a denial. Well, if they had a picture of that kitchen cabinet before, 6 months before or whatever, it's like a pre-loss assessment type of thing, things like that. So I've got a bunch of ideas running in my head to get to that point. But the biggest thing for us is just to expand, have a bigger workforce so that we can service more clients in greater parts of the state.
Awesome, man. So are you planning on using primarily like YouTube and just doing like educational videos for the end consumer?
Yeah, that's right for now. Just trying. I've never been really into being on camera too much, but I've gotten a little bit more used to it over the last couple of years. So, and I also too the experience, the experience from both sides. And now that I've got 3.5 years with our firm open and running successfully, I think we're up to about 250 claims since opening, open to close, and about 60.
Which, by the way, for a one-man show is nothing to shake a stick at. It's a lot of files.
Yeah, it's been trying at times. Not gonna lie, but it was a lot to do with Hurricane Irma. There was a lot of work out here. A little bit easier files, I would say, in some sense than per se mold and water claims, and especially cast iron claims. I mean, I have a few that are just dragging on for no reason, as the carrier just doesn't want to do anything. So if we get hit by a storm, I'm sure that number is going to skyrocket again. But yeah, it's no short feat. It's no short feat. But I came from a mentality of a catastrophe mentality. So when I was on the CAT team, man, in a 10-day stint, I was closing anywhere from 50 to 70 files. I mean, I was cranking things out. Obviously, they're not as grand as for me handling a claim from beginning to end because we just did a portion and handed it off to the next guy. But it was still a lot. It was still a lot of reports that we had to write up because just we wrote up an estimate. And that's the other thing, kind of jumping back as an insider type of tip. You guys got to understand, as a field adjuster, as an IA, as a desk adjuster, you can write up an estimate, but you got to write a whole synopsis. Most of the times there's a whole template of information that's required for every phone call or for payment, and that everybody above you reviews that, depending on the amount of the check and so forth. So there is a lot of work that goes into, hey, it's not just a phone call. It's all this other behind-the-scenes work that these guys are doing. So, again, if it goes back to saying, hey, here's a fully documented report, here's my synopsis, here's all this, that's one less thing they got to write up. And there, it just see attachment. That makes their job so much easier, and they're much more willing to pay those damn claims. It's incredible.
So if someone wants to go ahead and get a hold of you, what's the easiest channel? Website, email? Where are your social media channels?
We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We have been slacking a little bit with the social media. We're starting to pick that up. We're doing a marketing campaign. But the easiest way is getyourclaimpaid.com. That's our website. It's got direct links to chats, email, all of our information, our phone number. Shoot me an email. Shoot us a text message. We're here to just any claim. It doesn't matter how small, how big. We're here to help, and just give honest evaluations too. Because I mean that's the other thing too. You guys run into some claims that you probably, hey, can we do something? Yeah, it's a $3,000 dry out, but really doesn't need it. No, sometimes I'll get to a claim and it's like, look, just run with it yourself. This is too small. Here, I'll help you out. I'll give you some guidance, and it'll be free. I won't charge them, but it's just going to pay it down the road later on. And I have gotten some of my biggest referrals from the people who I just gave some honest advice to and told them, listen, don't file a claim. It's not worth it. You've got a small repair. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Just because you have some damage in a house doesn't mean you have to call your insurance company for everything. If it's within your deductible, it's within reason for you to repair it on your own and not involve them and hike up your premiums, right? So just take care of it. It's going to be within the deductible. Dude, I have gotten some of the biggest referrals from those clients or those potential clients at the time. It goes a long, long, long way. But on social media, everything is getyourclaimpaid.com or get your claim paid on Facebook and Instagram. We're working on getting the LinkedIn going, the Nextdoor app. We're about to start doing that as well. But just shoot us a message, shoot us an email, and we're here to help.
Well, awesome, Carlos, man. Thank you so much for jumping on today and having this, insightful conversation about what it's like on the public adjusting side, and more importantly, how water mit companies and older mediation companies, restoration companies, as a general rule of thumb, can go ahead and work closely with public adjusters. So again, man, thank you so much for coming on the show today. All right?
Sure, man. Anytime.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, interviewing the restoration business's top industry insiders, the movers and shakers, the hustlers and hackers. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. Hook up with us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Restoration Domination to catch video interviews, highlights, and behind-the-scenes content. And follow your host at Rico Garcia Jr. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.